So this is Dan of Vagabond Awake, and we're lucky to have Dean here on the channel. Over the last few weeks, we've had some guests that have come in and talked about various tax issues that they've ran into and concerns they have. And Dean responded with an email and said, I'm a CPA from Florida. I now live in Bangkok, and I've been helping people untangle some of the messes that they've made for themselves by not knowing enough information. And so he's agreed to come on the channel and talk about some of the things he's seen while he's worked with expats. Dean, welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for coming on. Let us know what you're running into and how you can help people. Maybe you have an appointment schedule, which I recommended in an earlier call we had, where they can just book online and book a session with you. And then you have an email, which we'll put in links below. People can, if they have a quick question or whatever, they can send. But let's, at your leisure, let's go over the topics that you've run into that are important. Dean, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'm happy to be here. I have a personality. I like to help people mitigate some of these problems. It's something that I've always been involved with, income tax, but I know it's a daunting thing for many people, and so they tend to avoid it. First off, when I run into somebody that has an issue, the first thing I usually want to do is review the previous year's tax returns. Number one, that gives me a roadmap for where they've been and the issues they have going on. And number two, I quite often find correctable errors in there. Many times there are things that I can file an amended return and get you back sometimes thousands of dollars. So first thing I do is review the prior year return. So one thing that came up in a previous conversation that you had on your channel were related to state income tax issues. Not everybody has to pay state income tax once you leave the U.S. It depends on your facts and circumstances. That being said, dealing with the states is not the easiest thing to do if you're not, experienced in this. States can be very complex, and unlike the IRS, have very little guidance. You can find reams of information and instructions with the IRS, but if you go to the State Department of Revenue website, they just don't have the manpower, and there's very little guidance with them. That being said, so there are 7 tax-free states. There are 2 others that are not completely tax-free, but they only tax dividends and capital gains. There are some states that are particularly not hard, but they have an extra level of care if you need to leave that state. They, of course, include California and New York, Virginia, New Mexico, and South Carolina. They have an extra level of due diligence needed to tell them that you're no longer a resident. Some people go through certain steps to terminate their state residency. It may include one or all of these, but get ready for driver's license, sell your home, change your financial accounts from that state. These are just suggestions. These are not things that you have to do, but these are some of the things that every state will look at. Another one is some people choose to establish residency in a non-tax state, like I want to set up in Florida. In that case, you have to make sure that you have your home established there and it's not back in New York. Your work has to be established in that state if you want to go to Texas or Florida. They look at where your family lives, where you spend most of your time, where you have your financial accounts, social, professional ties. These are all things states can look at. It's not always necessarily, but again, it's a preponderance of facts and circumstances to deal with the states. I've helped many people sever ties with their states. Here, typically it's because they've moved to a foreign country and they've been here more than 183 days. Some states look at that, but not all of them. So it really is going to be dependent on a state by state issue. I can go more into this in detail, but that would be on a case by case basis. So I'm just going to end that right now. Another thing that I run into often here, there are expat specific opportunities for people that are earning an income overseas. By that, I mean the foreign earned income exclusion and or foreign tax credits. These are big helps for expats. The foreign earned income exclusion in this particular year can exclude up to $120,000 of U.S. income. To qualify, you need to pass either a physical presence test, meaning you're outside of the U.S. for 330 days or more, and that's the easiest one to qualify for. But another one that people tend to not know about is there's also a bona fide residence test.
If you would like to learn how I fired my boss and traveled the world for 16 years and how I pay for things, grab a free copy of my ebook.
You qualify for that. It's a little bit more difficult, a little bit more nuanced, but the benefits are much greater. You can go back to the U.S. for more time because you're not required to stay within the 330 days. You have, a different level of residence. Foreign tax credits, if you are in a high tax country and you're paying income tax through your job or whatever your occupation is, oftentimes, if those credits exceed what you would pay in tax here, that will wipe out your tax burden. So those are two items that many expats are not aware of. Further down, I run into a lot of people that are self-employed contractors or digital nomads, and they have their own issues. Typically, they have 1099 income, and this would include 1099K if you're getting paid through PayPal or Stripe or Venmo. You have to report that. It's being tracked with the IRS. You can deduct business-related expenses from that income. The remaining income you can treat with the foreign earned income exclusion if you qualify. However, you typically will have to pay self-employment tax unless you're living in a country where you've paid their social tax and there's a totalization agreement. We've got agreements with 29 different countries, I believe, and they tend to be high tax countries, but it just depends on your circumstances. But that is something that is out there. So if you are a contractor, you have basically three options that I recommend. You can just deal with it directly, which means you're going to list that income on Schedule C of your taxes. Many people will start up an LLC. If it's a single member LLC, for tax purposes, it does nothing to help you. Your income's still going to go on Schedule C. Now, if you choose to be treated as an S Corp or some other type of entity, then you have a little bit more options. That being said, if you choose to be an S Corp, give you a Schedule K, and so part of it gets paid to you is W-2 income. The other part of it gets paid directly, similar to a dividend. Finally, one option that I've seen and have some clients here that use, they set up a foreign corporation, a foreign business. Doesn't have to be a corporation. That foreign business pays them directly. Okay, so we can include all of the income they're paid directly from the foreign business in the foreign income exclusion. The catch with that, it's not really catch, is you now have information returns that you're liable for, like a 5470 rep. So it just depends on how much reporting makes sense to you and the nature of your income. the point I want to get across is there are options to handle this type of income optimally. So there are options out there. Going back to the information filings, the 5471 is one that you don't want to forget about if you do have a foreign business. Failure to file, it's a $10,000 penalty. Some other information.
Is that the FBAR?
No, but I'm going to get to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is completely separate. It's a detailed informational filing, depending on your type of business, whether or not you're a controlled foreign corporation, how many owners you have. It really gets into a lot of detail, and it adds complexity to your return. If you're paying somebody to do your return, it's going to add expense to it. But if you save a lot of income taxes, more than worth it. So it's just one of the trade-offs you have to consider. I do 5470 loans for some clients. Okay, it takes more time. I'm going to charge them more because it takes more time. But if they save thousands in income tax, it's well worth it. It's just something to be aware of. Okay, the other big informational things that a lot of expats run into accidentally and are not aware of, you have to file an FBAR, which is Foreign Bank and Financial Account Reporting. It's FinCEN Form 114. It's reporting to the Treasurer. The IRS, the Treasurer. This has been around since around 1970. It's not really that new. It has a pretty low threshold. If you have foreign accounts and the sum of all of your foreign accounts, the aggregate total at any time during the year meets or exceeds 10,000 US, you need to file an FBAR. And again, this is one, every time you don't file it, it's a $10,000 penalty. It can be. The other informational return that was newer, it started around 2014, is FATCA. That is Foreign Account Tax Compliance. And this is something that is reported to the IRS. This has a much higher threshold than the FBAR, but it's more complex. It depends on if you're single or married, if you're living in the U.S. but still have foreign bank accounts, or if you're living overseas and have these foreign bank accounts. So there's more variability. All I'm going to say is the threshold, the lowest level, tends to be if you've got 75,000 US in a foreign account, this can go on your radar. And then finally,
does it have similar penalties as the FBAR?
It does. It's a good point. It does. It's also, I believe, a 10,000 a pop if you don't do it. Now, this is a Form 8938, and you file it with your tax return, whereas the other is a Treasury Department. If you don't file it with your tax return, it's separate.
And I'm trying to think of the word they use for, I can't remember it, but I'll describe it. If you go to them first and say, oh, I didn't know about this, and you file these things, so there's probably someone out there that's learning about this right now, and they're afraid, oh my gosh, it's been 4 years I've had 10,000. Does that mean I owe 40,000? Is there a process where they can go through you or what have you and file these forms and say, please forgive me, I didn't know about this? Does that?
Yes, of course. There's a number of things you can do. The first one that comes to my mind that I've helped people with is the Streamline program, and this has been around for a while. So you have a foreign offshore Streamline program, and you've got an onshore program as well. These are for people that have not willfully failed to file. They were ignorant. They didn't know something came up. File the Streamline program. You have to do the last 3 years tax returns and the last 6 years FBAR filings, if they apply to you. And that, along with the Streamline application, can get you forgiveness, get you back into the system in good graces, and you're good to go again. So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, cool.
There are some other things if the streamline doesn't fit your pattern, but the streamline is the biggest one.
We talked recently on the phone, and we didn't record it because for various reasons, we were just kind of setting up for this call. But at that time I suggested you were going to say, well, I'll just help people. And I was thinking you might get a lot of inquiries and you'll just be sitting at your desk for a few months. So I said, set up an online link that people can book an appointment with you, so you're not involved in all the coming and going, and charge some money for it. You are a certified CPA, if my understanding is correct, and you said, okay, that makes sense because you actually are working, and when you're doing this, when you're helping people. And so, did you set up some kind of online thing where people could book appointments with you? And if so, do you have a link that I can give them for that?
Yes. So I set up something through Calendly.
Right.
And so you go to calendly.com, and my ID is CPA 32704.
Okay.
I use that number because it's my Florida license number. Easy to remember.
Okay. So I'll put a link here on the video, and then a link below where people can just click it. And so they can click that and what is it? Is it 1/2 hour increments, or how does it work?
30 minutes usually is plenty.
Okay.
If we need to do more, we can talk about it, but 30 minutes initially and see where it goes from there. And if somebody wants to book some time and, pay a little bit for a half hour, if we ended up doing business together, I'll just credit that to whatever your fee is. I think that's fair.
Okay. And so how much is the first half hour to chat with you?
I set it for $50.
Okay, that's really
Just
fair.
random.
Yeah, of course. I mean, imagine a CPA for 30 minutes for $50. That's a bargain, and it's an early conversation about ideas,
Right.
So people can kind of get a feeling if what their trouble is and whether or not you have ideas about how to help them. And so that's great.
I don't want to take advantage of anybody, but I just, I want to get paid for my time a little bit.
Yeah. So you're a Florida CPA. My CPA in the U.S. Files taxes in a bunch of different states. I don't really know that much about licensing, but if let's say someone's watching and they're from Minnesota, and I don't know, maybe they moved to Texas or not. Maybe they're just in Minnesota, but they've been gone 3 years, and they're still paying state tax, and they have questions about whether they should keep doing that. Would you help if they wanted to? Could you help them file both their IRS and their Minnesota return, given that you're a Florida CPA, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I have a client that has lived here 30 years, and he's from Minnesota. I'm not going to say every state, but I stopped counting the different states that I've helped people with. There was 12 or 15 years in my career that I worked in income tax software. So I'm comfortable with all of the states. I'm not an expert on any state. I don't think anybody's going to say they are, but I'm comfortable with them. So yeah, I would help somebody from Minnesota review where they're at with their situation. If it makes sense to, apply for refunds, terminate your residency, whatever the case may be, no problem. I think some of the things, when people ask for, what should I look for with a tax provider? It's, you want to establish a relationship with them. You want to look for somebody that cares about you and your circumstance, gets back to your questions, things like that. I try to do that. I think it's good for people to get different opinions. I don't mean opinion shopping to get somebody that aligns with what you want to hear necessarily, but get different opinions and see what makes sense to you. Look for somebody that thinks outside of the box. At least that's what I think I do. I find a lot of things looking at different scenarios. I'm not on a time budget like when I was in public accounting, so I can take the time and look at different options that somebody that's on a time budget isn't always going to do. So another thing you need to be worried about when you're talking to people is if you do a little Google on your situation, you should know basic terms. And if you're talking to somebody and they don't know what a 5471 is, or they don't know what foreign earned income exclusion is, these are kind of red flags, you know, that they're not experienced with expat taxes. Obviously, you want to find somebody that's got a little bit of experience, not a brand new, you know, employee. And yeah, just be a little bit informed yourself so that you're somewhat conversant, so that you can drill down and see if this is somebody that is going to work well for you. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Dean, thanks for coming on. And I think some people were, from comments I got and emails I got on the other videos I've done, people were worried about, they thought one thing or another, they read something on Facebook or Google, and now they're hearing that that wasn't true, and they really need to speak to a professional. And it's just nice to know there's someone out there that they can contact and ask questions to and get some help. And if they want to, whatever, file amendments to fix things that were messed up, or do various things, you'd be a great sounding board or someone that would help them. So thanks for coming on and sharing these ideas with. I really appreciate it.
Well, happy to do it. Happy.
Okay, Dean. Feel free to come back. Come back anytime in the future where, I don't know, maybe you'll read about something happening, that some news about taxes and that you want to share that people should worry about, some law change or whatever. Send me an email.
Every year.
All right, my friend. You take care.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Bye-bye. Click the link in the notes below this video for Google Map links, reports, and other information. There you will also see our Retire Cheap in Paradise catalog, how we pay for our travels, and my free ebook, How I Fired My Boss and Traveled the World for 14+ years.